right, Texylvanians. I hope you all had a good lunch break. And as we got a little bit early started with lunch, we thought Q has so many interesting insights to share. We'll give him 10 minutes extra. So not only have we been in time, you're actually technically 10 minutes early. I'll not do another intro to Q as he's just talked before that. I just want to say quickly, I was trying to get Q a Romanian jersey, which he promised to wear after the glorious progress of the team. We'll have to do that next time. He promised to do that, so we all have to get him a customized Romania jersey, but we'll do that next time. And with that, I think I'm really excited. Q, as I shared earlier, he's moved half of his time to Japan, so he has amazing insights about this region. So give it up for Q, and let's learn what he has learned about Japan and the Asia region and broader. Thank you so much, Q.
Chef Faches? Something like that, right? All right. Let's get into it. How many people in here are familiar with Japan? I mean, all right, cool. Anybody like Japanese culture? Y'all can talk to me because we're going to be up here for a second. Say something. Shout it out. Make some noise. Konnichiwa. I like that. Konbanwa. We'll keep it moving. All right, so for the people that don't know me, I'm QuHarrison Terry. By day, I work with Mark Cuban. I'm the head of growth at Mark Cuban Companies. And by night, I like to talk about the emerging technologies that are changing our lives and improving our futures. If you want to get in contact with me, I recommend you scan that QR code. It'll be up there for a few seconds, and then I'm actually going to get into it. If you don't know me from my work with Mark Cuban, you might know me from many of my books. I am now an international best-selling author, and it's kind of unique to be here because some people remember me speaking at the Texylvania stage in 2022, and that was for my third book, The Metaverse Handbook. And so what's interesting about that is I do have an announcement. I'm going to be unveiling the Japanese handbook here soon. It's a book that's going to be real fun. It's coming very, very soon. It'll be out this year, and I'm going to be talking a bit about why I'm even spending my time in Japan, but this is a notable announcement. Now, to talk about Japan and the things that I find super fascinating there, it goes back to some of my first work. I actually was a consultant for the government of Japan back in 2018. And as you can see on this presentation here, I was a consultant for the future of work. Now, it's 2024, and we've seen the stats on Japan, some of the news. They implemented some of the strategies and ideas that we had. So I was a young kid at the time, met with a lot of their Fortune, they don't have the Fortune 500, but the Fortune 500 equivalent companies in Japan. We had a good time. It was great, and I didn't believe it was real. So that pursued me on this journey to actually learn Japanese, to the point I heard a konnichiwa in the crowd. I did that by first going out and just doing the grind, the Duolingos, all the different apps, finding an actual teacher and tutor, and ultimately I ended up starting LearnJapanese.com. And so this is actually one of my companies that I started. You can check it out. I'll show you a glimpse of what it looks like when you get to the website. And it's cool because what we do differently is we spice up Japanese. We make it so that you're not learning in a boring way, but we also focus on the speaking and pronunciation of some of the Japanese words. The hardest part is not actually finding the information. It's actually getting the pronunciation done correctly. So we have an app, we have a website, all the things that you all know very much, very, very well in Romania. But these are the first two assets. So I started a book, how I picked up Japanese. That tells a bit of the story. We made an app and a website to help people learn. But then ultimately, before I get into my case for Japan and why I think it's super important, especially from a venture standpoint, I wanted to show you a glimpse of what's actually happening in Japan and why it's such a fascinating culture. So this is from an upcoming documentary that I'm doing. I'm going to play this for 1 minute, and then we'll get into it some more.
Omote Sando, A tree-lined avenue flanked by a kaleidoscope of architectural marvels and haute couture, where Tokyo's heart beats in sync with the rhythm of strolling crowds. It's a street that whispers tales of opulence, creativity, and the relentless pursuit of beauty. A symphony composed by the world's leading fashion houses, each storefront a verse in this urban opera. Omotesando isn't just a street, it's a journey, a narrative woven from the threads of Japan's rich history and its ceaseless march towards the future. It's a place where every corner holds a story. But to really understand Omotesando, you've got to peel back the layers, dive into the narrow alleys that branch off the capillaries, feeding the lifeblood of culture and tradition into this modern facade. Here in these hidden lanes, you find the soul of the place. Tiny, meticulously crafted coffee shops where the air is thick with the aroma of freshly ground beans, a testament to Japan's obsession with perfection.
Now, we could watch that, but I have a presentation to give. So unfortunately, I'm going to be talking about venturing into Japan, but it's breathtaking. The culture there, the people there, some of the stats that I'm going to get into. One of the things that I want to talk about is, venture capital is existing and thriving in Tokyo, but unless you're there, you don't actually get a chance to see some of this stuff. And so I want to talk about just what I'm seeing. And these are my notes directly from my notebook. This is the first time I'm giving this. This is a Texylvania exclusive, so follow along with me, but it's going to be, I think, a pretty fun speech. So going from that, Japan is traditionally risk adverse. It's now embracing venture capital. That's something that is new. Tokyo seems to be the hotbed for startups in Japan, but there's also a few other cities that are, popping off as well. There's weird things that are happening, and there's some things that are going to make me go WTF. So if you see this weird facial expression, I'm explaining this for the first time. And yes, this is a true story. The government just announced that they're going to launch a dating app in order to boost the birth rate. So obviously, they've got a declining birth rate in population, and one of the things that has been announced is they're going to, launch an app and actually throw AI in it, and they're going to match their people up to do that. And this is coming from the government. This is not the private sector. So that's one interesting thing, but what's the reason for this major shift? Now, I believe that Japan has entered a new era. The country is basically embracing its risk, and it's saying we can get through it with technology. And what I want to showcase in this speech is, one, give you a glimpse of the emerging tech scene that's happening in Japan right now and how it's evolving the venture capital landscape globally, but I'm going to cover it through three sectors: Japan then, Japan now, and Japan as what it looks like in the future. Now, in the early days, Japanese companies were very traditional. They focused on traditional industries. They preferred domestic deals. They only worked in the country, and they were very conservative in their investment strategies. The traditional approach was hard cash and deposits, and there was a long standard culture of just avoiding risk. They want stability, they don't want any risk, and if you know anything about venture, that's not the case. And so this outcome resulted in over 50,000 shinise in Japan. And it's created a culture of risk aversion. You don't have entrepreneurship in the country as you would elsewhere. And it's slow at building relationships amongst businesses. So you don't just go to Japan and say, I have an idea, and try to launch your company or try to get a big contract. That's not going to work for you. And for those that don't know what a shinise is, now, shiniseis are interesting if you're a business person like me, because these are companies that have been in operation for more than 100 years. And Japan actually has 9 companies that are over 1,000 years old. And they're ultra durable businesses. They've endured everything from the pandemic to major storms, the shifts in landscapes, or emerging technologies that have come and gone. And it's crazy to see that these things still exist. This economy to build these companies still exists, but it's changing. And so the reason why this actually worked for shiniseis is because they kept really large cash reserves, right? They avoided debt, and that helped them survive everything. Cash is king, and that shiniseis are the best reason to prove that. When we think about Japan now, where they're going to the present day, you could see that the the environment that they have a deflationary environment, and it's persisted for years, and they have low economic growth. I mean, they've got an aging population, and the stats are working against them. And so what they want to do is they want to introduce this new capitalism initiative. And there's increased venture activity that is happening because of it. It's driven by the government, and I think that this is the more interesting thing as it relates to becoming a domestic investor, but also how they're pairing up with international investors. Now, there's two factors that are really driving this change. You have increased government support, and then you also have the tech industry growth that's happening within Japan as it stands. A lot of people here are familiar with the metaverse. The Apple Vision Pro, 42% of the technology that's in the Apple Vision Pro is derived from Japanese companies, 42%. So even the technologies that we're looking towards and saying are the future, I mean, it's coming from this country where the future really is kind of dicey. And so the Prime Minister of Japan basically said that they're going to grow by being connected to the rest of the world through free movement of people, goods, money, and digital technology across borders. Now, the Prime Minister is saying this because he's going against the current status quo. And in order to do that, he has accelerated this new capitalism ideal. It's through domestic investment programs, right? So they're investing in their own country, and they're saying, hey, we need to change the status quo. We're going to create programs to do that. There's a lot of reforms to encourage the growth of internal startups and to bring startups to the country. And then they also are saying, hey, we've got some funds to throw at venture capital. And so there's three big initiatives that are state-backed that are transforming this landscape. You have the GPIF, which is the Government Pension and Investment Fund, and they manage and invest the reserve funds from the government pension plans. They're a really big deal. We'll talk about that in a second. The second company that we have is the Japan Investment Corporation. Now, they deal between the public and private partnerships between these Japanese government companies and entities, and to date, the money hasn't been that large, but in the last year or so, the numbers have gotten really interesting. And I'll cover that in a second. And then finally, what is happening now with Japan is they're starting to launch these innovation campuses. They have one in Silicon Valley. It's called the Japan Innovation Campus, and it's in an incredible hub where you can start to bridge some of the relationships and get through some of the hurdles out overseas versus having to go to Japan all the time. Now, this pension and investment fund that I was talking about earlier, take a look at some of these numbers. So $1.5 trillion in assets is in this fund, and it's actually the largest retirement fund in the world. Now, when you think about the investments that they're taking about 318 million of that, and they're investing it into domestic deals, but they want to actually venture capital, and that means they're going to look externally and both internally within the country. They're a key player in the global financial markets, clearly, because they have so much money, but their investment decisions can also impact the culture of Japan, whether it be their economy, their investors' mentality, or even just the markets. And so right now, they want to diversify, and they want to look at different asset classes. They want to go across the region, and they're thinking beyond timeframes. I'm not going to get into some of the returns and all that. These are my notes. I'm just showing them with you for the first time. But what I will say is the Japan Investment Corporation, which is that second entity, they're pretty unique too. They're focused on supporting the Japanese infrastructure from both public and private relationships. So the government gives this entity $2.3 billion to invest in growth value companies. Those companies are traditionally looking at emerging technologies such as AI and else. And they're saying, hey, go do innovative stuff. The private companies in Japan are also contributing to this. And they've put in so far about $86 million into this fund. And what's cool about this is that is from investment within the actual country. There's going to be some more numbers I'm going to cover, so remember this stat real quick. Now, I talked a bit about this. I'm going to cover this really quick because I want to get to some more of the more interesting stuff here. But what I find fascinating is about $1.1 billion has been contributed to Japan as it relates to venture capital and how they're thinking about it. The Prime Minister still has this vision, and he's saying, look, I want to be a little bit aggressive. I don't just want to just say, hey, we've got money and throw money. I need this money to do something in my country. And he wants to increase the number of Japanese unicorns from 10 to 100 by 2027. Now, how many years do we have until then? Say it out loud. 2.5 years, 3 years. I'll take both of those numbers, right? Because to invest money, you need to actually get it out before the target date. So that means they have all this money, but they don't really have any companies to do it. And so when you look at their current unicorns, I'm gonna actually, you can see the numbers. The yen number is tricky, but you have to count the stuff in yen. This number over here on the right is in USD, so you can look at it. You know, their top unicorns, they're doing decent. 1.6 billion, it's nothing to scoff at. You start a company and do that. A lot of people will be successful and happy to do that. And a lot of these companies they're legit. Now, the future unicorns, we kind of can see who those people are going to be, but there's not 100 people on this list. There's just about 10. So they've got to 10x even this list in 2 to 3 years. So that means they're going to need some really, really, really aggressive shots on goal, and they're going to need it to happen in the country. So how do they do that? They're looking to establish themselves in Silicon Valley. They're looking to start fundraising a little bit early. But the reason why I think that this is also unique to not only Romania, but Eastern European countries and just Czechoslovakia in general, is because a lot of these companies are going to need help developing. They might know the cultural side. They might know how to put things together and make it work in the country. But even still, I mean, the average age in Japan is closer to 60 than it is 20. And when you think about it from that perspective, you can already imagine that if you can learn some of the customs, you can learn about 100 words in the Japanese language, you can actually start to make some connections and some deals that could be meaningful to you all because there's real money that's being transacted here. Now, this Japan Innovation Campus, it sounds large, but it's only been around for 5 years, and it's sponsored by the state, obviously. They've selected 52 companies. So, I mean, when we start a company, you know, the likelihood that it's going to be successful is not that great. So if there's only 52 in this program, that means they've got to even get their numbers up in order to hit the 100 goal. That's what VC is all about. And so in order to help the startup scale globally, they're just saying, hey, come get the office space, come learn some of the traditions, let us help you bootstrap, and really like take the co-working model and approach and go crazy with it. Now, you can kind of see some of the sectors of where they're at and where they're falling, because you would say, okay, you got 52 companies. Where are those 52 companies going to land? The majority of them are in seed stage or Series A stage, pretty far away from unicorn. And so we've got to grow really, really fast. You can see some of the sectors that exist in this community, but these are not companies or sectors that we're not familiar with, right? Like when we think about developing infrastructure, this is stuff that we're familiar with very much so. I think that this is an interesting hub, but there needs to be hubs more beyond just Silicon Valley. So this is a good start, but obviously we're in Europe, and I think that this is also pretty cool. I'm gonna skip through this. Andreessen Horowitz, Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz said that I think the issue with Japan entrepreneurship is that the supply of entrepreneurs and ideas or the supply, or is it the supply of entrepreneurs or the supply of money? And he says it's clearly the former. If we see a company that he thinks can be great, he'll make a deal and he'll definitely invest. So it's not that he's not seeing the actual companies, it's that there's not that many ideas, there's not that many entrepreneurs, and they're not reaching the highest stages. And so it's not that the money isn't going to Japan, it's that the fact that a lot of this stuff isn't going. And so how are we gonna like actually drive tech startups in this economy, and what does this look like? And so when you look at this chart, what is fascinating to me is that in 2023, things started to change rapidly. AI has been hot for a minute, but the number of deals that they did in Japan were 500 AI deals, 500 AI deals. And right after that, it was SaaS with 247. And then right after that, it was clean tech, which was 86. This is good. These are good numbers. It's great numbers. So the ecosystem is starting to improve and throw money into it. And that is bringing you new incumbents within the space. Sakana AI is like the open AI of Japan. When you think about it, they have 2 former Google DeepMind researchers that basically left Google DeepMind and said, hey, I'm going to go work on AI models in Japan. They got a $200 million valuation in January. They're already working on their next raise currently while I'm on stage. And what they sought out to do was say, hey, we're going to diversify the economy of AI. And they saw that there was no DeepMind in Japan. They wanted to become a DeepMind kind of company. They knew the performance and how to do it. They went out there and they made it happen. Now, what's interesting is obviously they're getting support from the government. And through that support, the government basically said they want to become the most AI-friendly country in the world. The prime minister actually is pushing this, and the chairman of the Democratic Liberal Party actually said Japan is not thinking of implementing strict regulation, and there will be fewer regulations as possible as it relates to AI. That's pretty gangster. And that's led to some interesting developments, such as the Japanese mayor suddenly speaking fluent English with AI, and in a video that even surprised him. This is a true headline from Japan, right? This is also another headline. The telecom giant there is using AI filters to soften the angry customers' voices when they call into call centers. AI tools are being developed for healthcare to help prevent dementia and understand, what they can do also for Alzheimer's. And so, obviously, there's going to be increasing investments in AI, increasing investments in AI in Japan, but also in tech and broader. But this will also boost innovation from the global sector in general. And so the prime minister said this. He said, it is his dearest wish to create the next startup boom in Japan, and strong incentives will be offered to companies that increase research and development investment in accordance with the national strategy, which I just covered earlier. So obviously, the big players in tech came over and said, let's do it. OpenAI, they opened up their first office. Their first international office was actually in Tokyo. That happened earlier this year. Oracle is investing over $8 billion in Japan in the next decade. Microsoft came back in and said, hey, we've got almost $3 billion at 2.9, and they put that in the AI and cloud infrastructure in Japan over the next 2 years. So whoever said 2 years over here was kind of right. You need to make those investments now and get that in. And so the AI revolution is happening not only here, not only globally, but there's a lot of money and a lot of readiness to adapt and implement this stuff in Japan right now. And so it's inevitable that this is going to be the place to make it happen. A case study that you can see from Microsoft is that they're working closely with the local government, with Japan, because a lot of the incentives and a lot of the partnerships to make these things happen work there. So you have to be kind of tied in on that sector a little bit. But, this is the president of Microsoft Japan. She says the Japanese have caught up, and I think it will continue to accelerate at this point because technology enables us to do things that we haven't been able to do. Blanket statement, but at the same time, they're basically saying, look, we've got a checkbook, we're ready to do deals. It's not just the big corporations. We're also seeing a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs bet on Japan. It's a long overlooked market. It's not that far for them. And what we're seeing is Japan kind of leaning into this. So their big university in Tokyo, the JF Oberlin, introduced a Chinese language master of business administration program. And it's a 2-year course that's conducted entirely in Chinese. And it includes lectures, research, thesis writing, all that good stuff. And the reason they do this is because they want to explore the market together. So they have Chinese entrepreneurs that are coming in with cash and ideas, but they're viewing Japan as a market. And what they're doing is they're attracting more foreign capitalists by training them up. And I thought that was cool because not only are they doing that, where they're integrating other people's ideas and philosophies into their own universities, they're actually also saying, look, we've got more than enough opportunities for people to come and live here. So if you make significant investments in yen, you can actually possibly get a permanent residency. That's in the works right now. Another thing that's just happened is the digital nomad visa. It's a really interesting program. We never thought Japan would do something like that. Now, it's a step towards the right direction. I don't think it's the final destination because it's still a little bit tricky to get a bank account in Japan. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A session. But, this is a quote from a former engineer at ByteDance, the company that's behind TikTok. And he said, in Japan, we can do whatever we have done in China, and there will also be new opportunities. So young entrepreneurs that are just across the way from Japan are saying, yo, this is the next bet. And my conclusion, based on looking at all of this stuff, is Japan is abandoning its traditional investment thesis. They're saying we're going to stop looking inward, and we're going to try to develop the things that we have here, but we're also going to look outward. But we're going to need some help. We need some people to actually learn our customs, learn our culture, get down with the program. And in doing so, the government will get involved. We'll actually start to accelerate some of your ideas. You know, you've got support all the way from the prime minister and whatnot. And then you also have the ability to have success stories like Sakana, which just launched earlier this year, $200 million valuation, team of like 2 people on the founding side, come in and do crazy stuff. With that being said, I'm going to be taking a lot of Q&A upstairs, so you can join me for that. This was fun. If you want to get connected with me, you can go ahead and scan the QR code right over here. And beyond that, like, I'm excited for Japan. Obviously, I've taken a few bets, and I'm going to be there for the next 2 years, I'm committing, to see, you know, what can be developed. If anybody is looking to build relationships with Japanese companies, you can just say what's up to me, and I can probably make it happen. Yosuke is actually here from Japan, so shout out to Yosuke. Let's actually get a clap for that. We got a Japanese entrepreneur in the building. What's up, Yosuke? Came all the way from Tokyo just to see all this and just see what the innovation was like. And so, you know, the formalities, we're still figuring it all out, but it's right now the time for us to actually say, hey, let's try to make a change. And there's real money for great ideas. So I know there's a lot of innovators, a lot of future thinkers in the room right now. Japan is where you really need to be thinking about making some investments and bets, because you actually can get deployment out there much quicker than you could some of your other counterparts. With that being said, I go by the name of QuHarrison Terry, and it's been a pleasure rocking with you all today.
All right, Q. I'll not let you off the stage so quickly, since you wanted to have a bit more time.
Okay, what's up?
I'll ask you like some of the questions about Japan.
All right.
So, one very, very quick question for you.
Yeah.
It has been North America, it has been Japan. Like, what are the other regions in the world that you'd be like really excited about?
Honestly, Europe obviously is something that's interesting to me. I've been coming here for a few times. It's so siloed in the GDPR regulation and just how, I mean, even the new AI bill that's being passed, that scares me. So I want to make Europe a third, but if I had to pick, I want to make it a third, but we got to figure out, like, we need to get the government behind some of this technology. I mean, they got to better understand what's going on. And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
You know where I'm going with this, right?
What's up?
Well, where in Europe could it be?
I mean, Romania is a good spot. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, Romania is great.
So we're very much looking forward for your 5th book, then, Understanding Romania.
I mean, let's do it. Why not? I mean, I need a Romanian co-author, though. Like, anybody in the building ready to help me with that? We'll break down. All right, I see you. Yo, come to the Q&A session. Let's figure it out. I'm always down to write a book.
All right, that's going to be really exciting.
That was the only question you had?
No, come on. Like, there's many, many more questions.
Oh, go for it.
So the other question is, like, I was really looking forward. You said, like, you had, like, some thoughts on China as well.
Yes.
But you said, like, you need to be very careful as an American that they still let you back in.
Of course,
so
yeah.
I'm very, very much want to hear your hot take on China and what gets you banned from re-entering the country.
All right. Well, now that I'm on the hot seat, wow, this is a tough question. All right. So what I would say about China is China's interesting because they're taking a black box approach to AI, where they have all this data that they've collected on their people, and they're like just throwing AI at everything. And so what people can learn from China is, you know, if you have the data, try to do stuff with it. And you see the research papers, the amount of research papers they're producing. You see some of the technologies that are coming out of China. But the thing about it is the U.S. we're in tense relationships, right? It's not great times. And so the innovation that's happening there and the innovation that's happening in the West, it's very much confused. I mean, we're banning TikTok and DJI and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a political field right now. But there's innovation happening, and we're learning from Chinese entrepreneurs. A lot of the top researchers in AI right now that exist, they're actually Chinese. So it's a world of globalization.
That is very, very true. And you always have a second career as a politician because you answered that. I don't think you'll quite get banned from re-entering the US. So
hey man, I'm an American.
We'll try harder next time.
I mean, if you got a Romanian passport or something, then we can like figure something out. But I gotta get back in.
You remember, like yesterday, the after party was at a law firm, so we could have like signed you up for the Romanian passport, so we can make that happen.
I
Before
mean,
Sunday
call Alan. You know, I was asleep, but Alan's around. We'll figure it out.
Okay, we'll get you the Romanian passport. Then one like final question, talking about like Japan and like China and Asia and broader. What is like kind of the innovation that you've seen that has like most blown your mind, like as a user?
It's a good question. Robotics. So, one, Japan's the only place I've been in the world where I literally get off the plane, I go to Yokohama, which is like a 30-minute ride out the city on the train, and it's by the bay. And literally you go by the shipping containers, and they have this giant Gundam statue. And you just think it's fake, it's not gonna move, it's not gonna be real. And the minute you get close to the thing, you see it lift its arm, you see it stepping, you see it like shooting lasers out of its eyes, and you're like, damn, the stuff that I was reading about, the things that I watched on TV like 20 years ago, they've actually built this stuff. And the crazy part is you can actually buy it. You can't buy that big one, right? But you can buy something that's bigger than me and you on this stage right now. It costs you about 5 million USD, but you can actually own a mech. And so when I think about that, and I think about where AI is coming and where we can actually infuse the AI mind with the humanoid concepts, a lot of the robots that we even have outside, they're Japanese. When you put that together, you actually have a future that's quite enlightening. It looks like, you know, Star Trek and all the things that we love.
I mean, I'm a nerd, so sign me up for like a mini Mac. When I was like younger, I went to Japan and I wanted to buy. It was like small one, was like kind of this size.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like $2,000 or so. So it's not like super cheap, but I think it has come a long, long way since then.
A long way.
So I totally sign up for that, and they've done like the first like robot dogs and stuff like that.
They have, and I mean, they need dev shops. Like, if you actually go to Japan, you'll notice that like they're super far ahead as it relates to bringing future technology to reality. But like the infrastructure to like actually interface with it is really bad. Like the user interface. Yosuke, don't take offense to this, but like some of those messaging apps in Japan are not the best messaging apps to exist. Would you agree? Yeah. Oh, you said the name. Is it a good app? It's a good app, but like it could be better, right? It's cute. It's cute. All right. So you heard it from the Japanese man, not me. It's cute. They need help. It's not that like you can't come in there and say it's shit. Don't do that. Say it's cute and say, hey, here's a few ways it could be improved. And they might not say anything to you. They might stare at you, but guess what? You might actually win that contract. And the minute you get in that door, trust me, it'll be very hard to get you out of it.
That's very exciting. It's another thing I learned, right? Like I have never said to an like idea like, oh, that's cute. That wasn't like this new vocabulary for me.
I mean, Japan.
All right.
You see, Japan actually makes me uneasy. That's how it actually puts me on my toes. You've seen me give a lot of speeches. This is the only one where I'm like, damn, okay, this is hard. Like, let me do it.
It's all going to be recorded. It's all going to be on the internet. We're like definitely like want to like put you like in a tough spot. But we love that. Like, you know, Q, what I loved like after like knowing you for a bunch of years now is that you actually want to be in like the tough situations. You don't want to be comfortable. Like whatever there's like emerging technology, I know I can like call up Q and say like, what's up? But like so, I think the next one might be like whatever's like gonna be like up and coming, you like dive into it and learn.
I mean, there's a lot going on in quantum, a lot going on in brain-connected interfaces. There's a lot going on in how we see data. Like, I mean, I'm really captivated by unstructured versus structured data in the debate for that, because you look at something like Gemini, which is trained largely off unstructured data. You look at something like OpenAI, which like the breakthrough for GPT was RLHF, which was human reinforced learning. And so you actually had very structured data going in, and you still have structured data coming in and out of that platform. And so that is really something that, you know, I think is going to be exciting for us as techies, like to watch on the back end side.
Q, I can't wait to see like what are you diving in next year. We'll invite you once you finish your Japan chapter. He's all welcome in Romania. He'll do like 2025, the year of Romania, understanding Romania. QuHarrison, Terry, thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you.
It's a pleasure.